Okay. So we'll call to order the Minturn Town Council meeting of May 21st, 2025. Roll call, please.
Gusty here.
Here.
Brian here.
Lynn here.
Eric here.
And Earl's here, and Tom Priest is out of the country on assignment. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Next, we have the approval of the consent agenda. Anyone interested in pulling anything?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Gusty, second by Kate. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Next, we have, we're going to recess and reconvene as the Minturn Liquor Licensing Authority for a special event liquor license for the Bendu Memorial Fund, the annual one. And take it away, Jay.
Okay. As stated, we have a special event permit before us. The council is asked to approve the special event permit for the Bendu Memorial Fund, Eagle County Community Foundation, for an event to be held May 26th, Monday, at the Vail Ski and Snowboard Academy property located at 1 Academy Loop, Minturn, Colorado. The applicant filed a detailed alcohol management control plan for the event, so it's really concise. We shouldn't have any problem at all. For the findings of facts, the application was filed on April 29th in my office, giving us at least 10 days notice, which is what we need. That the premises being considered is the Vail Ski and Snowboard Academy, 1 Academy Loop. The program has received permission from the facility, and then we have a letter to that extent. The notice of the public hearing was posted on the premises on May 8th, Thursday, and that gave us at least 10 days before this hearing. It was actually 14 days. The selling of liquor in the manner currently proposed in the application is not a violation of any zoning codes as stated in the Minturn Municipal Code, and the background investigation has been conducted on the principals, Samuel, and there's nothing came up. No issues there. And as of this writing, I've received nothing from any community citizen or anybody pro or con against it for it. So
I think it's a good deal.
once someone has a chance to speak, we do need to do a public hearing.
Okay. All right. Xavier, would like to come up and address the board?
Sure. Thank you for considering my application. I've applied to elevate the experience. I've been doing the run for 6 years. This year I've added outdoor yoga and a concert, and I think adding some beer and wine would make the event much better. So that's why I'm here today.
Cool. It's a fundraiser, right?
That's right. So we support student athletes, and this year I've probably given away $25,000. Two of those recipients won world championship medals this year. So we offer scholarships needs-based and merit-based.
And so public can show up and pay a fee to get into the celebration.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. And what's the time, just so in case somebody's streaming? They can...
So the first event is the run that starts at noon. It's a 5K,
Uh-huh.
and then at 2:00 there's outdoor yoga. Soon after that, start selling beer and food, and then there's a DJ at 4:00, and then at 5:00 we have the runway grooms.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Any questions that y'all have?
No.
Just go ahead.
Well, Bendu is a great guy, and thanks for doing what you're doing to keep his memory going and making a positive impact in the community and for the kids.
Thank you, sir. Happy to do it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I got to open it up for public comment. It's just a formality. We got anybody up there with their hand raised, Cindy?
No one with their hand raised, Earl.
Okay. We'll close the public hearing. And we have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the special event liquor license for the Bendu Memorial Fund.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Gusty, second by Lynn. Roll call, please.
Gusty, aye.
Kate, aye.
Right.
Eric, and Earl, aye. You're all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hope to see you there.
We got an exciting agenda tonight if you want to stay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Next time, I gotta go do homework.
this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the approval of the regular agenda. Any amendments or deletions? Ready? Motion?
Make a motion to approve the regular agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion by Kate, second by Gusty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next we have the declaration of conflicts of interest. Do we have anybody on the board that has a conflict on any agenda item tonight? Hearing none. Motion.
I think we just move on.
Moving on, public comment. Okay, this, how you doing this with this? Is there any member of the public who has any issue they want to address with the board that's not on the agenda? Then please raise your hand in Cyber World and let Cindy know, and we'll get you up there.
I just have one guest on the Zoom right now, Earl, and no one with their hand raised.
Okay. Okay, next we have council comments and committee reports.
I was just wanting to remind everybody that Minturn cleanup is May 31st. It's from 7 till noon, and it's at the snow dump just past Little Beach Park. And on the website, it lists what's accepted and what's not accepted.
Okay.
That's all I got.
All right. Right.
I had the opportunity to join Cindy and Brady from Evoke Bikes, and I just want to say thanks to Cindy for her work on bike wayfinding. I know the path is under construction still, and it's maybe going to be done by the end of the summer and connected into town. But I continue to think, and Brady, the owner of Evoke, kind of agrees that we are going to start seeing hundreds of people showing up in Minturn, and we could get even more with just some basic kind of wayfinding and marketing and effort, and really help our businesses sustain business throughout the summer.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Lynn, you want to tell us about Italy?
Well, I'll tell you about the Eagle County Fire District. So I'm on the board now, and
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And we have a work session scheduled for the next week, and I'm excited about the other members who are also on the board. I think that they bring a lot to the table, and I think it's going to be a very interesting experience, and hopefully we can get support from the fire district for our issues such as the overhead transmission lines and the fire danger. And hopefully we can talk about, we can get some help with the federal government setting up some kind of protected fire line for the town. So we're diving in.
Yeah, a good bunch over there. Yeah. Okay. Well, as everybody knows, I think we've got a new town manager who will be getting started in June. He may drop in just to see how our council meetings go here. So we need to have a good slugfest here to scare, to break him in, right? So anyway.
Oh, and one other issue that impacts Minturn is the timetable for replacing the existing firehouse in Minturn. And I think that's replacing that firehouse is also a priority.
Do they have the site selected? I know it's gonna be further south.
I believe that they've been in talks with Midtown
Okay.
for a site.
Okay.
Yeah, their designs came in with a firehouse when we reviewed those, right? There was a mention of a firehouse location in there.
Right. And
So the problem with the existing location is that the intersection, the turn that they have to make
Mhm.
is a real problem.
It's also the space of the living space is very, very tight. I took a tour of it with Jenny last time they had their open house, and it's amazing what they do out of that real small space.
Well, and it covers all the territory between Tennessee Pass and the Maverick Station in Avon. So it's a huge territory serviced by that station.
so, are they going to cover the cost of building the fire station down here?
I'm sorry?
Where are they, is the district going to pay for the construction of the fire station down there?
That's what's being budgeted.
Okay, good. Because they made us pay for this one.
I know they did.
So-
I know that it's still up in the air,
Okay.
but
Thank you.
it is in the budget.
Was there a contract on that? For like term of use, or
Yeah, that was a,
was that like 25 years ago?
50. It was 50-year it's a 50-year contract that they can be there and it's no fee.
But there wasn't like a term that we paid for it, and then if they move out before.
I think we own it.
Yeah, we own it.
yeah.
We own it.
Built it.
There doesn't, I'm not understanding why some firehouses get paid for and some don't.
I think that's, we
That's,
weren't part of the district and that was one of the requirements
It was
when
one
we
of the
were joining.
okay.
And that's how we own that lot, so.
Well, I believe Beaver Creek paid for their own fire station too.
Good info. Okay, next we have staff reports. Jay, you're first.
As you stated, Rob Gutierrez is going to be starting June 9th. So anybody that wants to come down and meet him, I would encourage anybody to do that. You might have noticed.
It's warm on the first day.
Hopefully it doesn't storm. The Minturn Public Works, you've noticed they've been driving the street sweeper around. One thing you might notice this week, I believe it's Friday, they're going to do it. They're going to actually street sweep Lions Lane, it's a private road that goes up past the townhomes. We will charge them to do that. And if you want your driveway swept, we'll charge you too, but you can get that done. But I didn't want somebody to go, why are they doing a private road? That's why we have that we rent it every year for about a month. And we get all the streets done. We muck out all the drains. We do as much work as we can with that thing. You might have noticed two other trucks in. One was a water truck. They're hosing down some of the worst parts of the sidewalks. And the other one is there was a Badger truck that was sucking out the muck that goes in those little tiny drains, the water shutoffs, not the sewer shutoffs. So just that's what was happening with that. The town manager's house, as I've stated before, we're going to have some work done to it. Not a lot. There's going to be some painting. We're going to restain a lot of the wood on the outside. It's never been done. And we had the roof checked. It doesn't look like there's a problem with the roof. It looks like the way they vented the bathroom and the dryer vents, whatever you want to call them. And then we'll probably put in two of those attic vents. But other than that, and then some paint on the inside, it just spruced up a little bit. I have reached out to Rob if he wants to move some stuff up a little bit early or something like that. He's more than welcome to do that. But if you see something going on, that's what it is. The town hall windows, we pushed it back because we were afraid it was going to conflict with the manager interviews. We sort of wanted windows in the building when we interviewed for a manager, novel concept. But because of their schedule, it's now pushed back to July, and July actually has a 5th week in it. So we're going to try to do it that last week of July. It'll least impact the meetings. But if we had to, we might end up doing a virtual meeting for planning commission if we needed to do that. Right at Augusto's, where Williams and Highway 24 connect, there was an impaired driver ran over a very innocent streetlight pole. Finding that pole again and getting a new one is going to be a challenge, but we're working on it. And then the other thing that was on that pole was the brand new license plate reader that the Eagle County Sheriff's Office put up into town. So that will get replaced out also.
That's the second time that thing's been hit.
Well, yeah, this time it really got knocked down though.
That's, I mean, like this, to go beat a dead horse, like CDOT has to be paying attention to this, right? Like I didn't even notice over there that Magusto's at some point, I don't, you guys would know better than I would, but like somebody had to put like D-Day beach defense structures out of iron to
Yeah.
protect that patio. Like that's ridiculous that we are just like, oh, you know, something's gonna drive through. It's on us to put up some iron, and you know, like can't we just lower the speed limit to 15 and put up sharp corner dangerous sign
Well,
for 25 feet?
we do have the sharp corners. That is actually public art, is the way I would phrase that metal structure.
Defensible art.
And if you notice, it sort of looks like a railroad track. And at the end of it is that mining cart.
Yeah, but you can tell it serves purpose.
It kind of does.
Like now, I feel okay about eating there. You know,
Right.
like, it's annoying to me.
Another CDOT issue that's going to come up here pretty quickly is apparently when they did put in all the curbs and gutters and things, they took out all the survey markers.
Oh.
So anyone trying to survey anything has to go back. It's like months and months and months of work.
Oh, lovely.
So that, yeah, that's going to be a problem that is going to probably come up.
I will point out to CDOT's credit, they did not hit the light. It was somebody. It was a DUI, and our insurance. I'm going to go through our insurance company on it but they will definitely be going after this person. It happened at about 10:30, 11
Yeah,
o'clock in the
I was
morning.
like coming back from the grocery store when I saw it happen. It was like, whoa.
Yeah, it was a bad. He was somewhat slightly over intoxicated. We are doing about twice a year. Usually we'll do door-to-door hangers. And we do it in the springtime because that's when we do our water report. So that will be in it. You probably, you might not have seen yours yet because I saw that Taylor Street has some more stuff in it just because of what's being done on the road and stuff like that. So it's a different packet. We're still putting that together and it's upstairs and it'll be done either tomorrow or Friday.
Can't wait.
The town parks are opening. I'm going to say this very casually, weather dependent. We've had a little bit of snow, so none of the sprinklers have been turned on or anything like that because we just don't want everything freezing. But we're starting to make sure that all the meters that are seasonal meters are working, that everything's going to be ready to go. But that includes the bike park. That would be opening. I believe it's the 21st it opens. But again, that
Actually, Jay, the bike park is actually open.
Okay, but if it gets too muddy, they'll close it down for a little bit if they need to.
Correct.
And then the Minturn Market, the very first one is Saturday, June 21st, and it goes all summer long, each Saturday. So I wanted to bring those to your attention, and that's about it.
I just want to revisit the entrance into town because I think something that, and I obviously don't know what the investigation determined, but I mean, there's that waterfall basically there that's all the time, especially when we start to get the melt. And there's no good drainage on that side, like so it spills into the road and then overnight freezes. And so if you're coming into town even fully capable and you're not and you don't hit the 25 miles an hour right there, like it would seem very easy for another calamity to happen because there's this giant frozen piece where we don't have adequate road drainage on a known water feature.
Right.
4 miles an hour. They
There-
told us, right?
Oh, yeah.
9 miles an hour.
Yeah.
There is at least one, I think there's 2 or 3 culverts that go under the road, and you might have noticed about this time of year, they're usually down out there and they clear out a
Yeah.
lot of that, and that's why, because it drops daily.
Right.
There's always, and those are interesting rocks, they're really sharp, so if you hit them with your tire, you might be changing your tire a couple of blocks down.
That seems like a CDOT issue to address.
It is, and they're the ones that dig out the culvert and that kind of thing. If we need to, we'll help with traffic flagging and that kind of thing, but they use their equipment and they do it.
Yeah, they have knocked off a little bit of the rock that was extended too far. They did it about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, I think. And back in the day, though, when we had a lot of snow going on, there was a guy that would come out and ice carve elves and wizards and all that kind of stuff right into the ice coming in. It was really cool. He was, we called him the Mushroom Man.
There are also a lot of rocks falling down.
Right.
Yeah.
Continuous.
I mean, it's fine when it's frozen, but when it freeze thaws onto the road at a dramatic turn.
There are actually, and you've seen them, there are actually 2 places, that S curve, and then there's one back further about halfway towards the interstate, that there's another, the
Yeah.
mountain's actually sloughing down, and you've seen that they've dug that out and taken some of the dirt away too. That's another icy area. One of the reasons I don't ride my motorcycle very often to work is because in the morning, it could be icy and no telling what the weather's gonna be like driving home.
All right. So next we have the manager's report from Katie Sickles. Katie's in
Yeah,
again.
good evening. Good evening, everyone. So I did provide my report, and I also attached Jeff Spinell's Taylor Street estimates, and we're continuing the discussion on Taylor Street, and he is planning to be there on June 4th to go over a couple of these other projects that he's been working on. So unless there's any questions, it's my report.
So it is not ready to put out for RFP.
No, not yet.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Let's see. Anything else we got? That just okay. All right. Anything else, Katie?
I don't have anything else
Okay.
yet.
Okay. Any questions for Katie? Okay. Well, good. Thank you, Katie. Let's see. Next item is Scott going to be here? I thought he was going to do the presentation.
He might be.
Scott is on Zoom. Sorry, Scott, do you want to jump in?
There he is. Okay. Scott, you're up, man.
Good evening, everybody. I am not going to present tonight, but Rachel Shinman from Economic Planning Systems is with us tonight. Rachel is the power and the brains behind a year-long process that Eagle County and the town of Avon really took the lead on. Rachel's been great to work with in EPS, and David from RRC. So in the packet is a presentation that takes 120 or 130 or 170 pages of analysis and needs analysis work that they've done over the last year and condenses that down into a short presentation. So Rachel, I'll hand it off to you, but again, it's been great to work with Rachel and her team. And I think, some of the results, whether it's specific to Minturn or just valley-wide with this housing needs analysis, aren't shocking. But as anyone who's paid attention to housing in the Eagle River Valley over the last 20 years, the number of projected or existing, gap in housing units has never gone down. Shocker. And it continues to go up. So with that, I'll let Rachel explain, what this was, how EPS and RRC went about their work and what some of the results tell us. So.
And Rachel, I just want to let you know that we are not going to hold you to the 10 minutes. This is a lot of data to go through, and it's an awesome amount of really quality data that I'm looking at. I went through too. So welcome, and give us what you got.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Scott. And apologies for not being there in person. I'm not feeling 100%. And so tracking down I-70 just wasn't in the cards today. Let me share the presentation. Oh, I have requested to share. So Cindy, I think if you can hit that. Oh, there we go. Okay. Let's get this up. And I checked, it is 120 pages plus appendices. So can you all see the full screen?
We can play the next slide as well.
Okay, there you go. Stop. How about that?
There it is.
Perfect. Every, between like Teams, WebEx, Zoom, the settings never stay the same. Well, thank you again for having me and for being a partner in this effort. As Scott mentioned, this has been quite the endeavor. It's been a little over a year. And for good reason. Housing in the Eagle River Valley is complex, and we wanted to make sure we got it right. And we had really everybody at the table, which made for a really robust process and effort. It means that we've really been able to comprehensively understand housing needs throughout the valley. So a little bit of why we're doing this and why we did it. And we went over a little bit of this in the data presentation earlier in the year. But one is because a lot of communities in the state, and particularly our mountain communities, have been doing housing needs assessments for a long time. And so this isn't new. We were updating the most recent assessment, which was done about 7 years ago. And then while we got started, Senate Bill 174 was passed last legislative session, which requires that all communities do housing needs assessments. And so the process took a little bit longer just to make sure that once the methodology guidance came out for those, that this effort was compliant for that. And so this study will meet the needs of Senate Bill 174. And so every community in the valley will have done their housing needs assessment for that. And then also just to continue on the work that the Eagle County Housing Partners are doing. And so, Minturn, along with all of the other communities in the region, have been working together and will continue to work together to take a regional approach to housing needs. Because the needs aren't coming from any single community, and no single community can address the issue on their own. And then additionally, there's always funding. And so most housing grants or other housing funding programs will require a recent housing needs assessment that includes Prop 123 funding in addition to others. And so having this assessment updated just helps with that. A couple things to consider. This is analysis. It is guidance. It is not a legally binding commitment. And so when we get to the end and we start looking at gaps and needs and numbers, nobody is committed to building a certain number of units or needing to build a certain number of units. This is intended to help understand where and what and why the need and the demand are. I will say that guidance is currently being developed on this action plan piece. And so that's a next step that Scott and the housing partners are all working collaboratively on. And so that, I believe there will be a requirement for it to be adopted by council, but that's all still in the works. So what did we do in this piece of it? So the housing needs assessment had these 5 key components. And so we walked through a lot of the data in our last session together. And so this evening we'll be doing just a little recap of the data and then really focusing on number 5 there, which is the current and projected housing needs. And so just as a little bit of an overview, to no surprise, housing prices have increased and increased significantly since 2020. What's interesting here is that we see Minturn, when we take out resort areas, so some of the base areas at Vail and Beaver Creek and some of those other communities that were really built to be second homes, Minturn has the second highest median home sale price in the valley at just under $1.4 million in 2023 was the last full year of data that we had. So $1.35 million. And we can see this point where in 2020, the median sale price was $709,000. And so that's almost doubled since 2020. And that's from 2019 at 16% annual growth rate. And so when we look at what this means for who can live in the community, to afford that median priced home, a 2-person household needs to be at about 290% of the area median income, which is quite high. And for the county overall, it's also close to 300% AMI. Another way of looking at this is by wages. So AMI looks at household income, which is all earners, all wages. And in communities like Eagle County, it can be a little disconnected from local wages because there are a lot of people living in the community who aren't getting their income from employment in the community. And so we also look at it in terms of the number of median wage jobs someone would have to work to afford that home. And so to afford that $1.35 million home, someone would need to work about 6.5 median wage jobs. And the median wage, I believe, is around $50,000. And a lot of the core occupations in the community actually earn below the median wage. So it would be even more jobs than that. And so really what this is emphasizing is just that home ownership is increasingly out of reach for a lot of community members.
I had a quick question on the calculations there. It's not surprising because we barely have any multifamily housing in Minturn, so it's gonna be expensive. But how do you arrive at the affordability? Do you assume like a 20% down payment mortgage given current interest rates or something like that?
Great question. So I am not going to try to recite all of the assumptions off the top of my head. They are in the report, but we have a model that puts in a number of assumptions. So we do assume a 5% down payment because that is often typical for a first-time home buyer accessing different programs. And then we use a 6% interest rate because that's the 30-year average. And so just accounting for all types of economic cycles. And then it accounts for insurance, miscellaneous expenses like HOA dues, things like that. And so there's a lot more detail on the calculation in the report, but it takes into account those factors and uses sort of overall averages for some of those assumptions.
All right, thanks.
Okay, Rachel, I got a couple of other questions as well.
Yeah.
On Proposition 123, with our high AMI, there's a bullet point in here saying we can prepare a petition based on the weighted average AMI calculations. And with us having such a high AMI, could you kind of explain that process a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So Proposition 123 or Prop 123 provides a number of different funding programs for different types of housing programs. So land banking, development, a number of different things. And within those programs, there are income limits. So a lot of them are capped at serving 60% AMI or 80% AMI. Communities can petition to be designated a rural resort community, in which case the funding can be used to serve higher AMI households. That process, there's an application, and then there's also a requirement to show the weighted average need in the community, which you won't see in this report because it's not a standard metric used in housing needs assessments. But we have put together those tables to calculate that need that can be used in the waiver application. There is also, I actually just learned this week or late last week, that the application can be done as a region. And so there might be a broader application from, say, like the Vail to Avon area to get that waiver. But it just means that Prop 123 funding could be used to serve higher AMIs.
And anecdotally, I've just been assuming the reason ours is so high is because we have a very small population, but also have some wealth in town too that have been coming in and building more, building houses and so forth. Is that the reason you think we're so high?
Yeah, there's a number of reasons. So that's part of it. I mean, incomes in mountain communities and sort of resort and resort adjacent communities have been increasing, partially from people moving in with money. Also, the way AMI is calculated is it is that household income, which is just everything that household is earning. And so as costs get higher, people have to work more or double up. And so there's more income in the household because people just need more. And so that's why we look at both the AMI and the wages to help separate those out a little bit. The AMI sort of tells us what is happening. The wages tells us what maybe the goal should be if people don't have to work 3 or more jobs. But there has definitely been a shift in the population that we can see in a number of data points. And then as we'll go through on the future need, that we calculate based on wages. And so that's where we see what that need distribution looks like is based on the wages associated with job growth.
Isn't another reason that in Minturn, a relatively small percentage of our housing stock is condos or duplexes? We're almost all single family residents.
Right. And so that will impact things as well, just because as we see, to own a home, you just need a higher income.
And then one last thing I want to bring up. I see where we need to identify current and projected housing needs by location. We have been talking with the Forest Service, which legislation got passed in the SHRED Act that would allow the Forest Service program of, if we have administrative sites within our jurisdiction, which we do, to do a 100-year lease for basically nothing, as long as we build Forest Service staff housing for them as well. Are you familiar with that program by any chance?
A little bit, not the specifics of it, but the general framework.
Okay. So should we be, this is, because of the cuts in the Forest Service, this has been delayed for us because we had it all set up with the superintendent, but he took retirement instead, which I don't blame him. But we're trying to work through it, and I want to make sure that you want to make sure it's kind of at least at a conceptual stage in order to be notified of a possible affordable housing development in town.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll see as we walk through the need calculation where pipeline projects and potential projects come in. And then that's also something moving into the action planning stage that we definitely want to be noted in the action plan for the town.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, no problem. So we'll keep going, but definitely jump in with other questions. The last piece of this is just rent. And so rent data is a lot harder to get than home sale data. home sales, we get data on all of the sales. Rent is just a stickier data point. But what we heard was that it's about $1,500 per room. So that's not really necessarily a 1-bedroom unit. That would go for more. But if we're looking at renting a room, 2 rooms, 3 rooms, really what this shows is that it is really difficult, if not impossible, to be a single earner household in the community. Just to have one income from one job around the median wage, you have to live with other people who make money to afford a place. And so then we also just wanted to recognize the outreach that was done throughout this process. So Scott mentioned that David with RSC Associates was on the team. And so we had a really robust survey effort. We also worked with Emily Payton and her team at Habitat for Humanity, and they helped us a lot with our focus groups. They also helped with outreach for the survey. And then we also did a series of interviews. And so I'm going to show you one slide that summarizes this. There's 30 pages of outreach summary in the report. I always recommend that people read our reports, but definitely community members really took a lot of time to provide feedback to this effort. We did our best to reflect that feedback in the findings, but it's also just good stuff to read. And then if you really want to dig into it, there's a whole survey appendix with a lot of survey findings. But in general, not a whole lot of surprising feedback, but just really things that emphasize the challenges that we know exist. Just affordability challenges, the instability of housing that people have, a desire to stay, but a recognition that leaving is always there if a housing situation turns sour. And then I think the biggest thing that we heard that wasn't reflected in the data, because it's hard to see that, was just the magnitude of overcrowding in a lot of housing units, whether that's 3 families living in an apartment, people just piled up on the mattresses on the floor in mobile homes, someone renting an apartment, not living there, turning around and subletting it to 8 people. It's not something that we only heard once or twice. It came up in every focus group that we did. And so just the magnitude of that was more than we expected. So what this brings us to is the housing needs calculation. And so I'll walk through how we did the calculations and then what the needs are for Minturn. And this is all because this was a regional assessment. This is all sort of nested within the region. And so there's 2 components to the housing need. So there's the existing shortage, which is based on current conditions, what is the housing need right now? And then there's projected demand. And so based on expected growth, what do we expect unmet housing demand to be moving forward? And so we do this at the regional level, so at the county level, and then the need is allocated to jurisdictions within the county. And based on the state legislation, we do this based on jobs. And so Minturn gets its housing need based on its share of jobs in the county. And then we take any projects that are under construction or entitled, and we take those out of the need, because those are things that are already happening and working to meet that need. And then we get the net need, and we look at that by owner renter and by AMI. And so this is the overall need for the region. And so you can see we have a total need of about 6,400 units, and that's about 2,600 on our existing shortage and 3,700 on the projected need. So it's about 40 existing, 60 future. And we can see that the biggest sources of need are related to jobs. So we have reducing in commuting and then employment growth, and then housing need generated by retirement. And so this is something that we're starting to weave in now, recognizing that there's a large magnitude of people currently in the workforce who are likely to retire. And a portion of those people will stay in the region, which means that they're opening up a job, but not a housing unit. And so we have an open job that's not due to job growth. It's just someone vacating that position, but not vacating a housing unit. And so we're accounting for that in our future need.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Are you saying that we need 6,375 housing units in Minturn?
In the county.
In the entire county? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, that would be a lot for Minturn.
Okay.
That if that had come out for Minturn, we would have gone back and checked our math a couple of times. One thing to note though is that this existing housing shortage of about 2,600 units is right about what it was in the last housing needs assessment. And so on the one hand, we can look at that and say, we're not making any progress. On the other hand, we can say, well, that hasn't gotten worse. And so we've kind of kept up with demand, right? That demand hasn't grown since the last needs assessment. It hasn't shrank either, but it being stable is not the worst thing. So that is a little bit of a silver lining. So then, oh, go ahead.
If you pair that with the like skyrocketing home price, does that tell us anything? It just seems like I don't know how to put those two together in my brain. Maybe I don't need to.
Don't think
Yeah,
of it as single homes.
Fair point. Okay. Yep, that's helpful.
There's a lot, but also, since the last needs assessment, a lot of things like the buy down programs have come into play. And so there have been ways of preserving or maintaining units that weren't in place the last time the needs assessment was done. So this shows our allocation of the need throughout the region. So like I noted, it's done by job distribution. And so we should have a decimal place there for Red Cliff because they do have some jobs. But, the vast majority of the jobs in the region are in Vail, Avon, and then what shows up as the unincorporated county, but is Edwards and Beaver Creek. And so those three areas combine for 75% of jobs. And so that's where 75% of the housing need is allocated. And so based on our data, Minturn has 1% of jobs in the county, so it gets 1% of the housing need. And so in total, that shows up as 93 units. And then we have 6 units in the pipeline. And so we get this net need of 87 units over the next 10 years. So just under 9 units a year on average. And so when we look at this need in terms of income levels, so we can see that existing shortage in the light blue and then the projected demand in the darker blue. It's really focused in this 50 to 100% AMI, even up to 120. And that's really based on the wages of the jobs that we expect to grow. And so the existing shortage is allocated based on the existing AMI distribution, which is done at the county level. So it's sort of the same across jurisdictions. And then the future demand is based on wages for the jobs that we expect to grow. And so this is just Minturn as a part of the overall need. And so we can see this little 1% there sort of spread across all the categories. So then when we break it down to a much smaller scale here on the chart, so we can see what this looks like, again, it's that same distribution. And so, our existing need is across all income levels. And our projected demand is really in this 50 to 120 bucket. And so the next thing we did is we split this out by tenure. So what are we looking at in terms of rental? What are we looking at in terms of ownership? And this was done through a couple policy decisions. And so these are also outlined in the report. But we assigned a tenure split to the need based on the income level. And so you'll see that all of the need below 100% AMI is rental housing. And so this isn't to say that people who earn below 100% of median income only rent or have to rent. But what it does mean is that it is really difficult to provide affordable homeownership options for households earning below 100% AMI. And so we're really lucky in Eagle County that we have Habitat, and they do an incredible job of providing ownership product at this income level. And without access to things like 0% financing, it's really hard for other entities to do that. And so what this tells us is that to provide ownership opportunities in this area at below 100% AMI, we need to partner with Habitat and groups like them. And otherwise, we need to focus on providing rental housing. And then we sort of steadily increase the ownership need as income levels increase. So, at 180% or 200% AMI, we can provide an ownership option through a deed restriction buy down. Or we can, build a unit that can be made affordable to someone at that income level. And then just two last pieces for context. We just pulled a couple pieces out of the survey responses. And so just understanding where people would like to live. And so a lot of this tracks a little bit with the job distribution, but we can see that 10% of people want to live in Minturn. We got 1% of the housing demand, so there might be more demand for units than units allocated to the town in the needs calculation. And then we also asked people for a little bit of feedback on, what type of unit, what size of unit they're looking for. And keeping in mind that this is not intended to be a market study, which gets a lot more into the specifics of what types of units we build and where and what amenities and all of that. But we wanted to have a little bit of guidance and indication. And the interest primarily was in 2 and 3 bedroom units.
So Rachel, with the 10% wanting to locate in Minturn, what was the total number of respondents?
Oh, good question. It was, it's not on here. I want to say like 2,600, 2,800.
Okay. So that would be 200. Now, they may be all from the same household here or there, but if that would be about 260 units that would be a need, considered a need by the specification, roughly.
Right. Well, and I mean, it's not necessarily intended to be the absolute number, which is why we presented it as a percentage. I don't have the exact question here. I believe it was if you were to move or if the housing that you were looking for was available, which community would you want to live in? So it's not saying that, 10% of people in the region tomorrow are going to show up in town looking for a house. But there is an expressed preference. And this you can see is people could rank their choices. And so this is 10% of people put Minturn as their first or second choice.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So those are the findings. So we just wanted to come back after the data dump that we did a couple months ago and talk about where it got us to. And so we can have, if there's any other questions or any discussion in terms of where we go from here. So the housing needs assessment report is done. And then the action plan is the next piece. That's going to take a little bit longer just because, I mentioned that this process was dragged out a little bit as DOLA was working through the guidelines on how to do SB 174 compliant needs assessments. They are currently working on the guidance for compliant action plans. And so while we want to be having the conversations about what the actions and next steps most relevant to Minturn are, we don't want to get too far ahead of the process and, draft a document that then has to be substantially changed. And so that is something that the Housing Partners Group, which Scott sits on, is sort of collaboratively working on and will be over the next couple months. And I believe the way it's set up right now for the action plan, there will have to be a public hearing and formal adoption. And so this is just much more informative of this is the housing needs assessment and an opportunity for questions and feedback. The action plan piece will, I believe, require a formal adoption, but that won't be until sort of summer at the earliest.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Rachel?
Well, I think it's good that we're working on this or seeing this data as we're working on the zoning updates, because Minturn, we're not in a place where we're ever going to go out and build 200 units of below market rate housing like we can't afford a sidewalk. So we're going to have to find ways, and there are a lot of ways to become friendly and not pay money to do this. And it's, policies, it's, some of it we're already doing, like we've got some good ADU policies. We've got the short-term rental restrictions. There's something, so there's a much wider group of things that we can do to become friendlier to multifamily and denser infill development and not go to sprawl. And I think second, it's like super important for us to sit here and like see this and see our numbers and say, we're second highest because of a lot due to our single family situation here. That's directly correlated with us also sitting here and going, well, we can't afford a new water plant. It's gonna be expensive. The sprawl kind of pattern of development just doesn't generate enough economic activity and density and in order to pay for the infrastructure that it needs long term. So it's a good time to be sitting these, and all of these things that we're facing are very closely intertwined.
Yeah.
Well, I think it just emphasizes how much the town needs the development at Dow Junction and how good that would be for the town.
Okay, Rachel, thank you so much for your hard work and whatever, any other staff that pulled this off. They did a great job.
Great. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay. Okay. Really interesting. Okay, so next item is business items, Resolution 20, Series 2025, a resolution approving the updated Town of Minturn Employee Handbook.
We went through this a month ago, 2 meetings ago, and held off so that Lynn could be back from her trip. So I won't go through a lot of detail to it. First, I would really like to thank Lynn for, you really jumped in and caught a lot of things. And, when you're the only set of eyes, I always worry that, I've worn glasses my whole life. They're not the best.
Well, I was just going to make the comment to thank you, Jay, for finalizing this employee manual that was handed to you in a very messy state.
Yeah, it was
And,
a good time.
I haven't super analyzed it, but everything I've looked at looks really good, and it shows that you did a lot of work. So thank you.
I have a brother that has a sense of humor like mine, and we always say comedy is not victimless. With that, in this ensuing month, I've actually gone through each with every single every single day with all 7 or 8 employees that we've got, including myself. I showed them, I took the same date, April 30th, and showed here's what would happen if you left today, here's what would happen, how your balance is going to work. I calculated out what their 2 years will look like, because everything's going to be accrued up to 2 years. Everybody, there were some questions, but nobody had any issues with it. So I think we're ready to go. If anybody's got any questions, now's the time. This is not, I mean, we can always do more. I think this is, I think, Lynn, maybe to your point, I think this is something that we probably should not hold off and do like every quarter century. We might want to do it a little bit more common than that. But from now on, I think I'm going to be looking at it pretty much annually and just sort of at least, I tend to read these things through quite a bit, but at least go through it once a year in my head.
All right. Thanks for doing that, Jay. It's a good document. Any questions of Jay? Good. Okay, so this is a resolution, so take a vote.
Let me also add, I particularly like what you did to the confidentiality section.
Yeah, we took that out, and because everything would have been in conflict with that. I mean, literally everything.
We'll dodge that bullet. Okay, if there's no further questions, do we have have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 20, series 2025, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Minturn, Colorado, approving the revised Minturn employee manual for the current and future employees of the Town of Minturn.
Second.
Okay, motion by Gusty, second by Kate. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have resolution 21, series 2025, a resolution appointing a new town manager. And
I believe he's online.
so are you there, Rob? Maybe not.
The silence is deafening.
I just had to give him permission to talk.
Okay.
I am online, but I don't know how good the audio is going to be because I'm on the road. But
Oh, okay. That's cool. Well, thanks for zooming in, and
Yeah, no
your
problem.
resolution is up. And we hope that we're looking forward to seeing you in the next couple of weeks.
yeah, same here.
All right. So when do you think you're going to start moving in?
Well, I was going to maybe try to come up this weekend, but I know I was going to be up there, I think end of next week to spend some time with Katie and the staff and just hear about what's going on. And so I think I'll be up there at least once a week for the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
3 weeks.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Any questions for Rob?
Welcome.
Thanks, Rob.
Yay.
I think we met you. Welcome aboard.
Excited to have you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would just add a couple of points. So this resolution does 2 things. One, it appoints Rob as the town manager. Within your charter structure, there are 2 employees who you appoint and who are directly responsible to you and terminable by you. That is the town manager and the town attorney. And for the town manager in particular, because of the challenges of changing politics and having to go out and find another job, which does happen from time to time, the contract, which is the other thing that the resolution approves, is the contract with Rob, contains a severance provision. So in the event that his employment was terminated for something other than for cause, the town would pay him severance initially in the amount of 4 months, and that will go up over a couple of years to a maximum of 6 months of severance, which is a cap allowed under state law. If anybody had any questions about the employment agreement, I'm happy to to answer those. But again, this resolution does two jobs. Again, you're formally appointing Rob as the town manager and you're approving his employment contract.
Okay.
Just one clerical note. Yeah, in letter D of the recitals, it says the residents of the town of Basalt, which we are not.
No.
Surprise.
See, there's the benefits of having a law firm that serves multiple community colleges of
You're going to Basalt instead of
we'll get that corrected in the final version. Thank you. Yeah.
Good save there,
like,
Kate.
what am I missing?
The salt doesn't care very much.
Yeah.
Okay, and with that information, any other questions for Mike? Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve resolution number 21, series 2025, a resolution appointing Robert Gutierrez as the town administrator of the town of Minturn.
I'll second that.
Motion by Kate, second by Gusty. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Rob, welcome.
Welcome.
You're official.
Yay.
All right.
Really excited.
Okay, so next we have ordinance number 5, series 2025, second reading. This was a continuance, an ordinance renewing the XL Energy franchise agreement.
Well, I'm not sure it was a continuance. I think it was approved on first reading at the last.
It was approved, but it does say continuance because we want to continue the current agreement
Yes.
for a couple of months.
That's a good point. Yes.
But that's about it. It's an ordinance just to extend it.
It's an ordinance because under your charter, matters involving franchise are to be approved by ordinance. So we structured that as such. In between the first and second reading, we did get some comments back from XL Energy, who asked us to structure this slightly different, where they would actually sign the ordinance consenting to the extension. So what's happening here is we have a franchise that allows for XL to provide electrical service and gas service within town boundaries, and the term ends at the end of this month. There are a few issues that are lingering that we're trying to finish negotiations with them. We've had a couple of calls over the last couple of weeks and are getting close, but did not want the franchise to lapse, because under the franchise you collect franchise fees, which is a important source of revenue to the town. So this document continues out the existing franchise agreement for 90 days. And in that interim period, we will be coming back to you with an ordinance to approve a new franchise agreement. We will have a meaningful memorandum for you to understand what's in that document and what changes have been made from the previous version of the franchise that was adopted. So,
thank you, Mike. Any questions for Jay or Mike?
And Mr. Mayor, this is a public hearing. Yeah.
We'll now open this up to the public for the hearing. Cindy, do you have anybody out there with a hand raised?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Close the hearing. There's no further discussion. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 5, series 2025, an ordinance of the town of Minturn granting a temporary extension of the franchise agreement between the town of Minturn and Public Service Company of Colorado for the use of town property to provide gas and electric utility service to the town and its residents.
I'll second.
Motion by Gusty, second by Eric. All in favor? Roll call, please. Excuse me.
Gusty, aye.
Kate, aye.
Brennan.
Then
Eric, aye.
And our way. All right, we're off to discussion items. We received, Katie put together 2 letters to send off to this U.S. Senate and congressional representatives. There's Katie right there, so it's your item.
Hello. So the two letters I put together, one is for water. In the skinny budget that was draft by the federal government, these letters would go out to, let's see, sorry. They would go out to the representatives, and then there's also one that goes to Jeff Hurd regarding the Bellum Bridge, or any bridge that you'd like to replace in the town of Minturn.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, that's necessary, and indeed the representatives are asking for these letters to help support them on these issues. Because
Well, actually, it's strategic strategies. They're the ones that have put together the template, and I just drafted it for Minturn.
okay. So anyway, if that's the budget is still in the House, and but if it passes with that and the Senate doesn't change it, there's going to be rural communities are going to be in bad shape. So anybody out there that happens to watch this recording, we urge that you email your representatives. That would be Representative Joe Neguse in the House Representatives, and Senator Bennett and Senator Hickenlooper in the Senate. So take some time and shoot an email, and you can look at the template in our packet and put your name on it and see if you can get some numbers going. So any questions from council on Katie with the letters? Okay.
I think they both look really well, so.
Okay. Okay, so next we have the water treatment finance options.
Do we need to give any direction for that, or is it just?
Just that we're on the side of the letters. Perfect. Assuming that y'all want me to.
Yes, do it.
Okay, thank you. So water treatment plant finance options. Katie's put together some stuff, so take it away, Katie.
Sure. I have been working on the financing for really since the day I started with the town of Minturn, and it seems like a lot has changed just from those couple of months. So the water treatment plant financing, the one thing that is pretty common is SRF, and SRF stands for State Revolving Fund. It is federal funds that they're loaned by the state through the federal government with development and construction strings as to how they are spent with dictated loan requirements. These loan requirements and how they're spent is also through the congressionally directed spending that the town was awarded the $3 million that is being managed by the EPA. So just so you know that those are the same requirements, whether it's SRF or EPA and the congressionally directed spending. So there's strings attached to this requirement. That also includes you can't pay it down early. But there are other ways to negotiate that. So in the letters that you just approved or had the approved for the mayor to sign, this is the presentation that was done by Ashley Badesh. So it basically shows that SRFs will decrease by approximately 85% from the federal government. What that's going to look like for the state, it's really hard to tell. But I thought I'd provide this information because it's really important as we go forward. The town has a financial advisor that I have had some discussions with. His name is Jim Mann. He's now the town manager for Silt. So we went through these, all four of these in great detail. The A and B Bank. He provided me, he said, you want to be cautious. And that's why my little cautious sign is there. It's likely a 10-year term. And negotiation should consider a rollover or interest rate reset. So typically there'd be initiation fees sometimes from the bank, at that 10-year term that you want to be careful of. So there could be other associated costs. And in 10 years, it's hard to know what that interest rate is going to look like from A and B bank. The other one is government capital. Jim calls this government lease on steroids. I have worked with this other communities before. We call it a private public-private partnership, the 3 Ps. The water treatment plant grounds are leased back to the town. The vendor's collateral is secure with a revenue stream. And so the reason this can be helpful to the vendor is that they've actually got collateral that is guaranteed or somewhat guaranteed, and there's also a revenue stream. So you're going to continue to collect revenue for water treatment or water distribution for your customers. The one thing about it that I do know that it makes people a little bit nervous that you're going to transfer property, the town's property, to that vendor. So a lot of times it doesn't necessarily pass the sniff test. And there also could be likely a 10-year term as well. Northland and Stifel Nicholas are both public finance companies. They will go out and get municipal bonds, and they're favorable to investors. Each firm is similar. The letters that I got, and I had Jim kind of explain the Northland is kind of like an initial discussion. Stifel looks like it's a little bit more that you're actually signing up for Stifel. And from my understanding, Alan, who is with Stifel, actually worked with the town hall bonds as well. So there is some familiarity with these two. Each firm will incorporate fees within their offering. So you may see those fees or you may not. So the town's current financial advisor recommended that the town hire a municipal advisor. Why hire a municipal advisor? So they'll provide you a unique package for Minturn. So including for short-term debt requirement. The package could include SRF negotiation, and I have not done SRF negotiation. The municipal advisor I talked to said that it's something that they would have to work with on the whole program or project. So they could also work with other loan sources, or more importantly, they could provide a competitive bidding process. So in other words, they go out to competitive bid for bonds. And then town council has the ability, with some recommendations and suggestions from a municipal advisor, to take the lowest interest rate or the lowest, there could be other negotiations that you would like to. So the ability to pay off, maybe a portion of this loan early or the bonds early. So all of that could be negotiated by the municipal advisor. So the town's financial advisor did provide a municipal advisor contact name and vendor reputable firm that is interested. And from my conversation with Mayor Baidez, he said that he also had a name and a contact information of a municipal advisor that the town of Vail is working with. So, it doesn't necessarily, it'd be somebody that's going to work on your behalf and look for the lowest interest rate. In addition to that bidding process, it gives you a competitive rate. So I would kind of suggest, I did pass on the engagement letter to town attorney Sawyer, so he has that. But I really kind of would think that the continued communication probably needs to be by your new town manager. So that's what I have.
So Katie, got a question for you. You had said that the engagement letter we would send to what was it, Northland? No. anyway, the municipal advisors, whether, we have two recommendeds here, and Jim Mann recommended one, and Vail is very happy with the ones they've been using, and this person does all their stuff. So, but we send an engagement letter, and that would be a trigger for them to send us a packet of their recommendations and their program and everything.
So that would start the conversation. So if you have a revenue stream through the Highlands parcel, or you would, some other negotiation factors that maybe Rob would work through that with the council, that municipal advisor would probably put together a package. It would be on your best interest.
Okay. And that doesn't require us to sign them up for our financing package, right? Until we actually use their recommendations.
So, a little different. Stifel and Northland, both you're looking for their services. A municipal advisor, you're actually paying them for their services to go out to Stifel or Northland or other bond companies to get the best interest rate.
Okay.
So there's a lot of moving parts here.
Okay.
So I'm understanding that without the state federal financing option, that means that we will be paying substantially more interest and may have a shorter term. Is that and maybe more fees?
So the requirement in development and construction requires American Iron and Steel, Davis Bacon Wages, Buy American Only, and there's a fourth one, can't quite remember what that is. Plus the administration of that, all costs. So in the experience that I've had with the American Iron and Steel, all those certifications, excuse me, it's more expensive. John Volk, he's gone out, had to buy based on federal funding, and is shocked about how much more you have to pay. Of course, in this environment, in the federal environment, it's hard to know what's going to happen. Whether it's SRF that's reduced, or you're trying to buy, American Iron and Steel, or you're using another nation's steel. All of those issues are really hard to put your thumb on today. 2 years ago, I would give you a lot different direction.
Private bonds do have one financial benefit that makes them cheaper than the open bond market, and that is, at least under the tax law today, they remain double tax exempt, meaning that the income generated from those bonds is taxed neither from the state nor federal government. And so they get kind of a preferred rate. If people in their retirement portfolios really like to have those, so the price tends to be better than on the open bond market.
That's what they kind of call the tax-free municipal bond, isn't it? Yeah.
And when we've had bonds before, is that the kind that we've had?
You did your last bonding before I was your town attorney, so I'm honestly not sure about that.
So with this town hall, we had both tax exempt and taxed bonds. And the reason we did is because of the breakout of the apartments, the post office, that kind of thing. But you could get both. I've done the double tax exempt bonds for schools before.
And the disadvantage of the double exempt bonds is the fees that we have to hire a bond counsel and pay.
So surprisingly, even for like state revolving fund loans, you're hiring bond counsel and you are paying some amount of upfront fees.
So no difference.
Maybe it's a little less with the state program than on the open market, but you're not escaping those costs one way or the other.
And can we have a longer term?
I think that's part of why Katie's recommending that we get an advisor on board, is to begin to investigate what options are out there and to get you better information as to what that's going to look like.
Taylor, do you have any idea of what municipal advisors, what percentage do they charge?
I'm sorry, I don't have that. I did take a look at the engagement letter before we negotiate those. You know, it really kind of depends a lot on the engagement letter and if that's the direction you'd like to go.
Okay.
So and Katie, correct me if I've got the nomenclature wrong. I believe the municipal advisor it's like hiring an independent financial consultant.
That's correct.
You're paying them by the hour to help you navigate through the financing world, and in exchange, they owe you essentially a fiduciary duty. They're out there truly looking out for your best interest. If you hire simply a company, of which Stiefel and Northland, whatever the other name was, to be your bond advisor, you're actually not paying them up front. They're commission based, and they then get their compensation at the time that the bonds are sold through essentially getting a portion or a fee.
So it sounds like it's a smarter thing to hire our own financial advisor and get impartial advice.
It can be, and I don't want to stray too far outside of my expertise. I think there are some very competent people who are simply, they're bond advisors, and they would guide you to different products that are out there. They are going to make money off of it. They perhaps may not have quite as much creativity just because they're looking at the box of products that their company offers.
That's correct.
But I'm not sure that means that it may not be the better way to go when we think through the kind of the total cost of those.
So you don't have a recommendation?
I don't as of this date. And it is something that I think, and it's been great that Katie's gathered this information. It seems to me perhaps waiting for a decision until we get Rob on board is of value, because he is going to be working with whomever we hire for the next year. And so having him do a little bit of vetting as to the direction he thinks we should go, I think has merit.
Are we doing any more on the Highlands? I know I keep beating that up, that we should be trying to capitalize off of that.
Yes, it's a great question, Gusty. Scott and I had a fairly lengthy conversation at the end of last week about this. He is putting together for next week a meeting with potential funding partners that they're all parties that were here in the room when we had that discussion, but to push that forward, as well as he's updating essentially the process for looking at a formal zoning process for the property, so that the town can truly begin evaluating its options. So,
great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a big, asset. If we could kind of capitalize off of that before we go get funding, that is a big.
It's an important piece of.
It is. Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna note. In the engagement letter, it's basically a pitch, right? You're basically going out to people and saying, like, hey, we need help. Here's our situation. Like, we should be clear to outline that uncertainty. And then it seems like we're going to come to some situation where it's like, here's like scenario A, B, and C, like develop us a plan for all three scenarios or two scenarios or whatever. Because, we could get $1 million for the parcel. We could get 0 for the parcel. We could get, who knows?
And those are discussions that I think is once we bring on the appropriate advisor, and Rob gets kind of oriented and begins to feed them the information of the decision matrix you would like to see options on, those are variables that he'll need to communicate.
Cool. Yeah, I just want to make sure that the person that we're asking is prepared to. We're not just asking for like find us 15 million as cheap as possible. Like it's a
They're
complicated.
very accustomed to doing this. Yeah, this is what they do.
So just a point of clarification, you said private bonds can offer a lower rate than public bonds?
I don't want to suggest that the rate at the end of the day would be lower, but the rate is going to be lower than just private market bonds that otherwise are available, that you know, private corporate bonds or something like that. And the reason is that people are willing to accept less of a return for the double tax exempt benefit that these bonds have on the income.
Okay, so it's an easier bond to sell, perhaps.
Yeah. And governments are far less likely to default. There's less risk associated with that type of debt.
There's less risk, and then there's going to be some guarantee that your rates are covering the debt plus additional money just in case. So
one good reason among many to actually have the Highlands money available before we do this is that we may look awfully risky without that, insofar as we're asking to borrow a very large amount of money in relationship to our size and income as a tiny little town. And that, I think, might be a problem for us, with the bond people.
And we did lose a grant source, perhaps, with the Bureau of Reclamation being gutted of their grant fund for these kind of projects.
I did see something last week in the paper, and it's the internet bidding that's gotten so popular, and like 10% of that actually goes back for water treatment plants, and it's just like for Colorado. And I didn't know how you look into that. It was just in the Belle Daisy last week. And yeah, granted, it probably isn't going to pay for a more $14 million water plant, but you know, if you get 500,000 out of it, it's a little something.
So I think this is extremely important. Katie brought this forward. The financing of a large project like this, it's a complex thing. It's not something people like us deal with on a very frequent basis. Starting to get our heads wrapped around who the players are going to be and what the potential options are is super helpful. But I would recommend that we kind of continue the final decision until maybe the second meeting in June. That will give Rob an opportunity to communicate with Katie, get a download, and to come back and make a recommendation. And I certainly will work with him to.
It's only 6 days after he starts work.
Well, or the first. Well, we're not going to have the first meeting. Are we having the first
in July?
meeting in
That's
July?
in July.
No,
Yeah.
July 2nd.
July 2nd is canceled. Yeah.
We'll have 2 meetings in June. Yeah.
2 meetings in June and then July.
Is there a big rush? I mean, like rush it to get it done?
You know, to be honest, I don't think there is so long, because you know we're not going out to bid until towards the end of 2025. Maybe
Right.
Depending on the intersection of how the council decides to proceed with the potential sale of the Highlands property, maybe we push that back to facilitate that.
I'd rather try to concentrate more on the Highlands, you know, trying to capitalize off of that. And then we know, you know, how much we're actually needing to finance if we do swing a deal.
Okay. Then perhaps we look at I guess it's the only meeting we'll be having in July to have further discussion about this. That'll give Rob an opportunity to kind of get his head wrapped around not only this, but also the Highlands.
He's, just so you know, he's
he's
on
out that
vacation
week.
on July 18th,
right.
which is so
Isn't the meeting the 6th?
June 18th, yeah.
We can still get his input though.
Huh?
We can still have his input.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, how about this? This is not a notice public hearing, so we can bring this up at any agenda we like. Let's get Rob on board and he can say, I think now's the right time to bring this back to council.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Clarification on just hit the role. What is the difference between this advisor's role and Jim Mann's contract with us? And like, does that type of contract generally be able to provide these kind of services? Or?
Jim used to be a municipal advisor. That was his career. What Jim does now is he has a little side business where he does kind of financial modeling for communities of limited numbers, such as Minturn, where he'll crunch numbers for you on different debt cost scenarios as to what your rate structure should be. And that is really the work that he primarily has done for the town since we engaged him. And I would think as we continue to work toward pulling the trigger on building the water treatment plant, we'll still have him engaged at some level to run financial analyses of if we're taking out this much debt and we have this operating cost and we have this maintenance fund and what is the rate structure going to look like?
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Katie. And we're off to future agenda items.
I didn't see any
Oh, we have
proposed.
nothing on June 4th.
I didn't either. All I seen was the agenda, schedule.
I didn't see it.
Thank you very much. Okay.
It's not in the packet.
Give me just a moment here.
I can pull it up on the screen if you need. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
That would be helpful, Cindy.
Okay, one moment.
Yeah, I didn't even show the dates now. They're showing the date.
the-
Yeah, there's nothing.
There we go.
I forgot to mention the GoPro games. June 5th and 6th. Get the word out, guys.
Never seems to be an issue.
Can you make it a little bigger?
I'm even close to it.
Keep going.
Perfect.
Okay, I can make out special presentation.
Does it need to be bigger?
Can you read? Why don't you read it out to us? It's just, make it bigger.
Oh, here.
I guess that's an advantage of sitting on this end. You
Yeah,
can see it.
seems great.
Okay, how's that?
Okay, whoever's closest can read that out. Let's do June 4th first. Kate, Gussie, can y'all see that?
Special presentation, speak up, reach out. Special presentation, bulk lakes update with ERWSD. Review and acceptance of the FY24 audit, business item. Resolutions awarding Norman Avenue paving, cemetery pedestrian crossing, and North Main Street RMS. June 18th, 2025. Resolution to reappoint DDA board members for initial staggered terms. Cindy. Minturn DDA IGA. Discussion direction. What's that?
Oh, I said that's me too. Sorry, Cindy.
Oh, also Cindy. Discussion and direction on the model traffic code adoption with amendments. No meeting, July 2nd. July 16th, an ordinance adopting the 2024 model traffic code. And an ordinance to add new Colorado traffic violation, prohibits drivers from holding or handling their phone while driving, including at stoplights. Dates to be determined. Holy Cross Energy Transmission Line. Discussion and next steps, likely late September 2025.
Is Jeff Spinell going to be coming in with his work on the Little Beach Park? Does he need to make a presentation with his cost schedule here? Or is that, no, that's still waiting, but it'd be good to have an update on that for council.
On Little Beach Park, is that the retaining wall, the service
I'm sorry?
for June 4th? Are you looking for Jeff Spinell to do an update on Little Beach Park, the retaining wall, and the service road?
If he's got it all together, yes. If not, we can boot it to the next meeting. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
this
think-
project won't be done until late fall, and I think he's got this on kind of on a back burner. Not necessarily that it won't happen this, go out this summer, but
Okay.
he's got a couple other things that Taylor Street is probably one of the things he'll bring back in addition to the items in this resolutions.
Okay.
or resolutions.
But Jeff, I think Jeff is planning to be at the June 4 council meeting. Does that
Yes.
sound right, Katie? Yeah.
That's correct.
So he could give a soft update on the various projects he's involved in.
All right. Anything else? Any other agenda items anyone wants to recommend?
It'd be good to get a discussion on just traffic calming not on streets and just look at some.
Okay.
I don't know who would lead that.
Actually, let's wait till Rob is online because infrastructure is his thing. He's well educated in infrastructure stuff. So
sounds good.
That would be good. Okay. Okay.
To adjourn?
Second.
Oh, Eric, maybe.
Almost. Almost got it out.